believers to better understand the community that surrounds us, to learn, to discern, and to act. We give thanks for our speaker, for Ed Hosak, and for Cooperative Christian Ministry, and for all that it contributes to our community, and for the privilege of being part of that ministry. God, we ask that your Spirit be with us through the remainder of this Koinonia process as we take time for the summer months and regather this fall to hear from others, and then to move into a time of intentional discernment, to corporately determine how the Spirit leads us to respond to the needs of our community. We ask all these things in the name of your beloved Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. All right. I'm going to give you a quick introduction of Ed, as I shared with Ed this morning. Although many of us know Ed to one extent or another, it's always interesting to learn a little bit more about an individual. And so Ed's textile career began as an industrial engineer with Milliken & Company in South Carolina, and led to Cannon Mills here in Cabarrus County, which became Fieldcrest Cannon and then Pilatex, where he served as general manager of manufacturing and operations for the bedding division. After the mill closed in 2003, Ed and his wife Judy started a small nonprofit called Life Builder Ministries, serving the unemployed of Cabarrus and Rowan County with a desire to be part of the solution. In 2005, Ed was asked to serve as executive director of Cooperative Christian Ministry, Cabarrus County's primary crisis assistance provider. In the years that followed, CCM doubled in size and scope, creating new programs and services in response to the needs of the local community, and has established itself as a vital resource for the people of Cabarrus and southern Rowan counties. Ed's transition to the nonprofit sector was aided by completing Duke University certifications in nonprofit management and nonprofit leadership, as well as strategic perspectives in nonprofit management at the Social Enterprise Institute in Boston. He continues to learn nonprofit governance through board service on the Atrium Health Cabarrus Advisory Board, the Healthy Cabarrus Advisory Board, and by chairing other boards, including the Cabarrus County Homelessness Task Force. Ed is a 1981 graduate of Western Carolina University, and Ed and his wife Judy have lived in Cabarrus County for 35 years, which I think qualifies for the status of native. They have 4 married children and 11 grandchildren. 13, sorry. Yep, well, I think I have that more current number here somewhere. Sorry about that. Yes, 13. So please join me in welcoming Ed Hosak.
Thank you, Randy. So yeah, that is my claim to fame, 13 grandchildren. And I had little to do with that, but nevertheless, praise God. It's good to be here. It's good to be among friends and those who have been so much a part of the ministry. Reverend Nancy Cox, for your leadership and continued guidance when I send out those emails. And Don, for serving on our board, thank you for being so much a part. It's just good to be here. I have more slides than we can possibly look at. Quite frankly, I took a presentation I did recently for the city of Kannapolis, and it's here. I added made a couple changes for you, and we'll move through them as quickly as possible, because quite frankly, what I'd rather do is answer your questions and speak exactly to what you're thinking, but nevertheless, maybe I'll generate a few questions along the way and share with you some things that are brand new. So, Cooperative Christian Ministry. Am I clicking or are you clicking, Debbie? I am. Okay. How about this? Okay, perfect. So, Cooperative Christian Ministry just released our 2005 New Horizons Strategic Plan. Actually, we're in year 2 now. And what I want you to see here is there's 5 parts to that strategic plan. The first part that we're going to talk about today has to do with addressing homelessness and housing crisis in Cabarrus County. And goal number one, quite frankly, is about creating new capacity, housing, shelter and transitional housing capacity in Cabarrus County. From there, it goes to creating the network of comprehensive services that are needed to help turn lives around, to focus on the children, especially those 0 to 5 during those cognitive years that are in our housing program. Working adults in transition are going to continue to struggle, and then the last area has to do with our senior adults, the fastest growing homeless population in Cabarrus County, senior adults. So that's our plan. I want to show you quickly 2 things that CCM's working on right now. It may answer a few questions and it'll make sense later, but we're going to skip through some of these slides pretty fast because we just don't have time for them this morning. Let's see what's next. Okay, here's just a notation that it just references that the entire community has acknowledged that housing, homelessness, and housing crisis are a challenge in our community. The community needs assessment made it the number 1 priority. Our schools have identified again over 500 students who have been homeless at some point during this school year. In fact, you have a document that shows about 513 through the end of March this year in our school systems. I'll make reference to that in a little bit. Our police departments acknowledged last fall about 14 different encampments and 150 to 200 people living in tents. Those are the ones that they're aware of. Most recently, it's not listed up there, but our Chamber of Commerce has made housing one of their priorities as well. So our community recognizes that we have a challenge. Debbie? So here's the 2 projects that CCM's working on. I'm going to skip through quickly. The H2H, or Homeless to Housing Project, addresses the very populations we're serving today. Only today, with My Father's House, the Mothers and Children, and the teaching housing programs, we believe we serve about 10% of the need. The Huddle Housing Project is designed to address the extremely low income in our community. I have a slide that will show you who that is, and we'll touch on it quickly, but this is a group of folks who most often find themselves in that chronically homeless category, and for whom there is no answer today in Cabarrus County. So those 2 projects, here's just an overview of H2H. You can see across the top it addresses our 3 housing programs and that path to affordable housing. There are many, many hurdles and many, many steps for a family who has fallen into homelessness to recover and find stability again, and that's what CCM's programs are all about. I'll show you that in numbers in a little bit. So the H2H project is a campus design. It's right now based on 2 24-unit apartment buildings, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, an operations center. This is a project that we are pursuing right now. As a matter of fact, tomorrow we're going to be releasing an RFP for the purchase of land in Concord for this project. Debbie? If you look at this schematic, it gives you kind of an idea of 2 apartment buildings, an operations center, open space for children and for adults. So this just explains a little bit about the comprehensive nature of what we do. We're not going to try to read it. Right now we're looking at potential sites. There's a couple out there, but we will spend the month of June looking at those possibilities and then choosing one. It's a $13.5 million project when you include the first 3 years of operating. But we believe that God has called us to this and He will provide. And it's only one part of a 2-part initiative. The other part is Huddle Housing. So let's go ahead, Debbie, to the next one. Huddle Housing is addressing, what I did is I went to some folks, creative folks, and I asked them to design extremely low-income houses for extremely low-income people. And the Huddle Housing concept came out of this. So it's basically, who are they? It's folks on SSI disability or folks 40 hours a week and minimum wage. I'll show you that on this next slide. So this slide just begins to represent from the National Low Income Housing Coalition who these folks are. Many of them are working. It could be somebody making minimum wage at 40 hours or $15 an hour at 20 hours a week. You can see the number of seniors. According to this very report, 62% of the individuals are senior adults who are in this extremely low income gap in our community. Let's continue. So the project was designed around a piece of property in North Kannapolis that we have owned for a number of years. We were actually running into some infrastructure challenges. And in December of this year, 13.7 acres that are in that survey on the left were donated to CCM just 6 months ago. And we're moving this project to that site in the design stages right now. So Debbie, that site will look like 12 to 15 little carriage houses around a community, huddled around a community building. The architects gave us a beautiful rendering about a week ago, and I'll show you their version of the hands of God holding this population. Let's go to the next slide. There's the property. It's off Pine Street in Kannapolis. It's accessed through Tiffany Drive, which is a mobile home park, and we're designing around this piece of property, this campus. So the architects have designed the Huddle Housing, which is on your right, that group of 16 little carriage houses huddled around a community building, looking like the hands of God holding this population. To the left of that is a future phase 2 that right now we're calling next level housing for these individuals once they're established. Let's continue. So it's a $2 million project. We're working right now to put those dollars in place because we own the land, we have the drawings, we're working through the architectural design of those carriage houses, and we're ready to go. So you're looking at a $15.5 million initiative that we believe God has called us to. We have asked for American Rescue Plan dollars from our county and our cities. Presently, there's a $2 million commitment, but they're waiting on us to put some more things in place for final answers. So we'll keep moving. So the homeless populations, these 7 homeless populations were identified several years ago by our local Cabarrus County Homelessness Task Force. These haven't changed. They've stood the test of time. And so every population of homeless that we're dealing with right now in Cabarrus County has fallen into one of these categories. So you ask the question, or we ask the question, why these populations, why now? The why now is pretty simple. Back in 2019, the Homelessness Task Force released a document called a 5-year prospectus on solving the housing crisis. There were a number of different types of program designs to address these populations. The 2 that I just shared with you were part of that initiative. But last year, nearly $100 million of American Rescue Funds came into Cabarrus County, unexpected, unbudgeted, and directed toward relief. And so CCM approached our local leadership and said, we're willing, if you are, to move this community ahead, perhaps 7 to 10 years in this fight against homelessness, because certainly these projects would take us that long if we were to approach them ourselves. Why these populations? I'll show you that in a minute. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. There it is. Back in 2019, these were the categories of needed housing where we had shortfall. And as you can see there, the top one is single-family transitional housing, and we needed 80 to 100 additional units in our community in 2019. And in each one of these categories, you can see a different needs, so that down at the bottom, emergency and transitional housing need was 200 to 300 units. And workforce housing at that time was conservatively estimated at 1 to 2,000. Since that time, Concord did its own study and established just the city of Concord needing about 3,000. So the 2 years since 2019, I guess going on 3 years, has made a dramatic change in the housing market. We know that. What I want you to see here is some work that is being done in terms of the senior adult supervised. The Aya House has established a program with 23 beds in that category. It is focused on individuals returning from incarceration and also some folks who are reentering from residential rehabilitation, but they're doing a good job in that sector. The family shelter, the Salvation Army is working on that project right now. It seems I need to stay right here and not mess up the sound. And they're hoping in January or February to have 6 new units for families. That's going to help in that category. And they're going from 28 beds to 62 beds, so they'll have additional chronically homeless beds to help serve that population with emergency shelter, which is important. So in terms of senior adult, right before COVID, Prosperity Unlimited opened a 60 units called Prosperity Ridge in Kannapolis. They had over 300 applications for those 60 units. And so I ask you, where are those seniors now? For the young adults aging out of foster care, there was a need. These are primarily young ladies. The The Open Door House has opened their facility for 7 individuals. I think they have 3 present right now, and they're doing good work. Unfortunately, there's really no significant work being done right now for single-family transitional, and that's where the H2H project hits. It also serves the senior adults and adults with disabilities. And in the chronically homeless category, there's no active project right now for a long-term solution for the chronically homeless, and that's what Huddle Housing is all about. Let's keep moving. And so the truth is, we in our community really don't have a sense of the true magnitude of homelessness. We do not know. We have indicators. It's the sort of a greenish copy that you have there that comes out quarterly, and the Cabarrus Homelessness Task Force puts that out, and it helps us look at some of the touch points to have an indicator of what's happening in the community. CCM right now is receiving about 38 applications a month. In 2021, we were receiving 19 a month. So we're double right now what we were receiving just a year ago. But hopefully in July, that's our plan, we're going to roll out helpwithhousing.net. And this will be a portal that will be available to anyone and everyone in the community, either someone who is homeless, who is in housing crisis, or someone who knows someone or is helping someone, to go to this portal, to answer a few questions, and 2 things will happen. They'll be immediately referred to the agency that best suits their needs. If they mention reentry from incarceration, they'll be referred directly to the Aya House. If they mention domestic violence, they'll be referred directly to CVAN, hopefully directly to their application online. They'll also receive a resource sheet for other types of resources that they may need in their situation. On the backside, though, we will begin to capture and quantify the real need in Cabarrus County as it relates to homelessness. Will we get it all? Of course not. But we will have the best assessment that we've ever had in Cabarrus County of the true need in our community. That's a good starting place. So as we go along, about 10 years ago when we created My Father's House, Mothers and Children and the Teaching Housing Program, we sort of used this diagram to sort of help the community understand. On the left-hand side, you see street outreach like the Opportunity House, and you see emergency shelter like the Salvation Army or CVAN, someone like that. CCM builds the bridge to stable housing, whether it's affordable housing in terms of tax credit housing or something like that, or home ownership through Habitat or Prosperity, or now We Build in Concord. So that's who we are. That process looks like a, here we go. It's a long process. It's a tedious process, and for folks in our program, it's 3.5 to 5 years. That first step is 6 months. The second step is 12 months, for a total of 18 before they would move into the teaching housing program, which can be 2 to 3.5 years in this program. I tell you that, and I want you to capture that moment. 18 months, once they've finished My Father's House and the Mothers and Children, they've completed about 18 months, and they're moving into teaching housing. The next document is one that hasn't been released yet. It is being prepared by the Cabarrus Homeless Coalition, which is some of the leadership in the county, as well as some of the people who are leaders in the housing arena. This document begins for the very first time to give you the whole picture of housing and homelessness in Cabarrus County. I gave you a copy because we simply don't have time to go through it, but I want you to study that when you have the opportunity. It begins, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. It begins to demonstrate for you what's happening in this housing arena for those who are at about 80% of area median income and below. What I want to show you is something that we discovered in developing this chart, if you will. It began to illustrate what we knew internally, but now it articulates it for us. So what I want you to see below the chart is a group of families that entered Cooperative Christian Ministries Housing Continuum. We looked at a window in 2021, that year, and we identified 11 households who were in our teaching housing program who had averaged about 2 years with us, okay? So they've completed My Father's House, the MAC, and now they're in teaching housing. 11 families who entered into our program. They always come in through My Father's House. Of those 11 families, 7 of them, 64% of them, came in averaging about $5,000 a year in income. The reason is because 5 of them had 0 income. 2 of those families averaged about $18,000. And then another 36%, the other third of them came in averaging about $24,000 a year. That's who came into our program. But the next line shows you that at the 2-year point, these families still have potentially another year and a half to 3 or 2.5 more years in the program. But at the 2-year mark, 55% of those families are now in that above 20,000 category, averaging something like 25,000. I can't even see it on there. There you go, 25,000. None of those families are at 0. In fact, all of those families within the first 6 months were employed. At that 2-year point, 3 of the families were averaging 45,000 and 2 of the families averaging 60,000. These are single moms. Now, there's 2 things I want you to see here. First of all, when you look at the service providers on the bottom and you see cooperative Christian ministry spanning those 2 income categories, those are the folks that are coming into our program. But if you look at just below that, the red bar is Habitat. And then the green bar is We Build, the affordable housing people. Okay? And what Cooperative Christian Ministries program does for these families and did for these during this 2-year period is begin to move them forward financially so that they first qualify for the Habitat programs and then can qualify for the We Build housing programs. Now, in addition to the financial, there are many, many other structures that are being put in place for these families. That is the nature of what we do and why we do it. We're not affordable housing, but we help people find that stability and get to that place where they can have access to it. The other question you might have is, why is somebody who is making $65,000 a year still in your program? Well, the answer is, first of all, they may have only been in teaching housing for a couple of months. And because of where they may still be handling debt issues, they may be handling credit issues. More than likely, in order to qualify for a mortgage, they have to have paid rent on time for a year. And she may still have 6 more months to prove herself before she's going to qualify for a loan. So it's exciting to see them grow and progress and come through the program. Just a little bit about access. We are concerned to make sure that everyone has access. When we look at the racial, ethnic demographics, we feel good about how we're reaching all demographics. When we look at the geographics, Concord and Kannapolis, we're very satisfied with how things distribute there. With our population being 60 in this analysis, and this analysis I think does not have the unincorporated areas, but nevertheless, 63% white, 20% African American. In housing, we're serving about 30% white and 55% African American. The geographic accessibility runs very close, plus or minus a few percentage points, and a lot of that has to do with awareness. So I want to stop there with what little time we do have, and count on you, Randy, to call it, and ask you your questions. What have I not spoken to, or what have I stirred in your mind that you'd like to hear about?
Ed,
Yes, Don.
The model has always been a bridge, a transition, but Huddle House is a little different, isn't it? Could you tell us a little about that? Are people going to live there forever, or because they're very low income and there's a lot of these people don't have the opportunity to, increase their income. So
Right,
what's
right.
the situation on those folks?
Okay, thank you for asking that. So many of them are on fixed income, and that's not going to change, right? Some are minimum wage workers or part-time workers. Many of them are part-time because they're caring for somebody and they can't work full-time, okay? So there are a lot of transitions that can occur in this population. The first, and perhaps the first goal, might be reconciliation. Some of these individuals, if they can reestablish themselves, you might say, clean themselves up, prepare themselves, and reconcile with family, then they may find the solution there, and that may be sometimes the best solution. For others, it may be improving their employability and actually being able to either find care for that other individual that they're caring for, or simply improve their vocational aptitudes and help them get beyond minimum wage. The third, and a very likely solution for many of these, will be a roommate. A roommate. But folks don't always know how to be a roommate. And so part of this process, the Huddle Housing program, Don, is designed to be a 3.5 to 5 years. Some will need 6 months, and they'll be able to reconcile, and they'll be on their way. Others will need longer. And that's why Phase 2 has next level housing, which could be tiny houses or 2 bedrooms. And part of the process right now, in fact, we just initiated one home in our teaching housing program, and we're calling it the Roommate Project, just to see how it goes between two low-income, extremely low-income gentlemen who are now roommates. So we have to learn as well how to teach folks how to be good roommates.
I have a question about people who are undocumented. A lot of times they fall through the cracks. And I know that some undocumented folks will huddle together and live together, maybe a whole group in one house. But what happens to those few who fall through the cracks, who really need some housing? And of course, they're not documented, so they may not have access to some of the funds that are available.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And you can see that in our food program during the last couple of years. The percentage of Hispanic who were accessing our food skyrocketed, and it's mostly because many of them were not receiving the other supplements that many were. So we're very pleased that all of our programs now are equipped with bilingual staff. What we're asking in terms of our housing program is that a person be employable. And there are many, many ways to accomplish that. Resident status is not a factor in any of our programs. We see very few, as you alluded, we see very few in the Hispanic population, the Latino population, because they are culturally so close and so willing to support each other. And that was true during the 27 years we ran the emergency night shelter. We had one Hispanic individual arrive during the years that we ran the emergency night shelter, and they got one night and family came and got them. That's how it is. Yeah.
Ed, I just want to say thank you for your vision, your compassion, and your commitment. I know that some years ago, you and Marshall talked about big, hairy, audacious goals. And seeing those goals coming into fruition is just stunning. I know there's a lot of need, but with all of this data too, I'm wondering if you can make the PowerPoint available to us so that we can look at it with a little more time and intention on our own.
Absolutely, and you have a copy. You're welcome to use it in any way. Yeah, and Debbie, you know that it was Marshall's vision.
We do thank you. I have a question about, is there one population, you talked about families, single adults, seniors, youth aging out, all those populations. Is there a population that has had more success with any of these programs than the others?
Well, so CCM's involvement has been primarily single moms. And it's simple. We believe we're serving about 10% of the need. And so we chose to focus where we thought the most vulnerable were, and these moms and then these children. And by serving families, you can serve more people. We have seen tremendous success among these families. Mixed in with them are single females, some single males in the teaching housing program, some senior adults, and we've seen tremendous success among them because so many are so resilient and they're so determined and they're motivated by their children They just needed someone to come alongside of them. They certainly have shown us the most. And there's more, the children are showing progress, and mom is showing progress. And that's also the largest congregation of homeless in Cabarrus County right now, is families with children. Our school systems are telling us that there's just an incredible number of families who are living in hotels right now with children in the school systems. And that's challenging. Perhaps some of the most successful single moms or women with children that have come through our program are those who come to us through CVAN, because their life experiences are different than many who have come through generational poverty. And they have the aptitudes and the cultural norms and the resources, and some of them are professional. They just needed a place to land and a place to set a new direction, and that's been pretty remarkable. Yes, sir.
I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this right. There's land that you need, and there's housing that you need, and there is a source of both as the changes go on with the orphanage and what that Church of God orphanage can or can't do these days. It's sitting right there. Are you in dialogue with them at all?
I have approached them at 2 levels.
It's a loaded question. I mean, I know that.
The answer is yes. I initiated a dialogue. I was responded to, and I spoke with their director. Their director, the next step was for the director to take it to the board or the leadership, but that has not materialized at this point. Now, when we release the RFP on Monday, I'll make sure they get it. There's wonderful opportunity out there in that area.
Hi, Ed. Thank you. One area of the population that I didn't see is seniors who are not independent, and that's a serious problem. Do you know of anyone in the community who's looking at that issue?
I'm going to have to answer the question no. All of the opportunities that I'm aware of are for adults who are living independently. Elder Orphan Care is doing a beautiful job going into the homes of folks who are trying to remain independent. The folks like Prosperity Ridge and some of the other senior facilities are intended to be independent living. That's a difficult question for families.
Thank you for answering on this.
Yeah, Ed, thank you so much. It's like Debbie said, it's remarkable to see how CCM has grown and the impact that you're having. It's just mind-blowing, really.
Yes.
My
It blows
question,
mine every
well,
time I look.
your leadership is a big part of that, and I just want to thank you for that. So my question is kind of along those lines, and to some degree, Joe's as well. Where are you finding the support for these big projects, either through funding or advocacy, that sort of thing? And then also, how is the alignment of support through our elected leaders as well, both local within our communities and perhaps state and even at the federal level? Are there things that we can do besides just being aware that we could be advocates for what you're doing as well?
Mm-hmm. Well, you have been and can continue to be advocates, and I appreciate that. Incidentally, we are 3 times the size that we were at the turn of the century now. And it is as a result of this community responding to what they see as being both vital services and valuable outcomes. And so we appreciate that. And so we know the community supports what we do. In terms of these two projects, the timing of this is built around the availability of rescue funds. Otherwise, we'd be moving much slower. Don't know who I might be offending, but I have directly challenged the elected leadership of our communities to lead. I believe if they will accomplish what I asked, out of nearly $100 million, provide $7 million, 4 from the county and 2 from each of the cities, 3 from the county and 2 from each of the cities, that $7 million will be halfway there. And I believe that our community has the capacity to do what we need to do. And we'll be pursuing it that way. We're going to be able to approach Huddle Housing much quicker, and that's okay. It'd be nice not to be doing 2 things at once. But we will approach Huddle Housing. We'll get that in place and hopefully move very, very soon to move the H2H project forward as well.
Final question or two? Okay. Well, Ed, I have to confess that after a presentation like that, I kind of feel like this a little bit, in the best sort of way. So thank you for all the helpful information that you provided to us as we continue on this journey of education and discernment. As I mentioned, we are taking a summer break now from the Koinonia process, although your Koinonia committee will keep working over the summer, and we will look forward to hearing more presenters in the fall. And then when that fall session concludes, we will go into a period of intentional discernment and decision-making about where we go from here. So thanks to, I know many of you have been here for most of these presentations, so thank you very much for your presence. I think as someone who was not a Cabarrus County native, but has lived here for a number of years and sort of has that surface familiarity with so many organizations, it's just been wonderful to get into the trenches a little more through this process. And Ed, kind of goes without saying, we're so grateful for your leadership and Cooperative Christian Ministry and for the privilege of being part of it. And many of us look forward to being more involved going forward. So let's give Ed
Thank you.
a thank you
Thank you,
for
Ed.
being with us.